Okie dokes. Let's see if we are live. I think we should be live on our YouTube channel and also on my LinkedIn as well, but let's see. Yep. We're on YouTube. Let me check LinkedIn real quick. We are live on LinkedIn. Okay, and let me just check one more place before we get started. Bear with me here. Okay, we're live on Facebook. So I think we're live in all the places that we need to be live on. I don't know, actually, we need to also go live on Instagram. So give me 1 second there. And let me log in on Instagram because I know we do have a lot of people who follow us on there. So here, live, start. I can't use camera. Why can't I use the camera? Okay, there we go. No. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble here, guys. Live. Post. No. Okay, it's not working on here. I guess I'm gonna have to try using my phone. Bear with me, guys. We'll be right with you, okay? Live. Title. Here we go. Q&A. Summer. Okay. I think that works. Cool. So we're now live on Instagram. We are live on YouTube, and we are live on Facebook and LinkedIn. All right, guys, thank you for bearing with me there. So today's a special Q&A. We're going to do our standard monthly Q&A and just answer any questions that you might have about recruiting. But in addition to that, we also have a special announcement, which is our Black Friday announcement. Okay, so it is the month of November, and we have decided as a company to do a Black Friday deal this year. And for those of you that have been following us for a while, you probably know that we pretty much never discount our program. And so this is pretty much the only exception to that. And I know a lot of you have been following us for a while, have wanted to work with us, but maybe you're worried about the price, or you're just waiting to see if you can get a better deal, or you can come in for a slight discount. This is basically that opportunity for you to do that. Okay. So what we're doing for Black Friday, and you will not find us doing this at any other time ever, is we're taking 15% off whatever package you end up signing up for. Okay. That's across the board. And so naturally, the first question that people are always going to ask is well, how much is your program? And so just to kind of answer that question and get it out of the way, it really depends. Our program is different from most of the other programs out there in that most programs will tell you upfront exactly how much they're going to charge you, because what they're delivering is a one size fits all thing. They'll give you very specific deliverables of like, hey, this is what we'll do for you. Like we'll edit your resume twice. We'll, like review your cover letter once, or, oh, we'll spend an hour with you, or our coaches will spend 5 hours with you once a month for the next 5 months. Like whatever it is, like it's very clearly defined what you get and what you don't. And I think that works for some people, but again, like I said, it's one size fits all, right? What we've realized from working with over 700 students at this point is that every single person is very, very different when it comes to what their needs are, as far as like recruiting help, right? Like some people need help building up their resume, getting relevant experience. Some people need help with networking and getting more referrals. Some people need help with the behavioral interviews and polishing up their stories. Some people need help with the technical interviews, like they don't know how to answer technical questions in these interview settings. And, there might be other things too. Like some people are international students. Some people have low GPAs. Some people go to non-target schools. So everybody has like a different set of challenges. And so the reason why our program is so successful is that we don't take a one size fits all approach to how we work with every single person. We come up with a customized game plan for each individual based on their circumstances and what their needs are. Right. And so the answer to your question of like, well, how much is the program? It's going to be dependent on a couple things. One is like, what do you actually need help with? And two is like, how much help do you actually need? Right. And so that's where like, and three, like we need to first understand what those things are and determine if we can even help you. Because to be honest, like a lot of people, we talk to them and we realize that we can't even really help them. We're like, yeah, like we could help them, but like, even if they had our help, we would not be confident that they would be able to get a job. And so in those instances, we actually decide not to even work with those people because we offer a money back guarantee and we don't like working for free, right? Like we don't like doing a bunch of work with someone, not getting them the result and then having to refund them the money. And so like, we only will take on people that we are like really, really confident that we can actually get the offer for. Okay. And so with that said, like, I don't know what your exact situation is, so it's hard for me to give you an exact price point, but all you need to know is that it could be anywhere. Like you're going to get 15% off no matter what the normal price would have been. And so like you could save anywhere from hundreds of dollars to upwards of like, like $1,000 plus even. Like it just depends on the package, right? And so it's not an insignificant discount, to be honest, and it is like the best price that you probably ever get from working with if you ever consider working with us. And so the long and short of it is this Black Friday deal is good for the month of November. Okay, so if you sign up in the month of November, and you can't even just sign up, you have to apply. We have to talk to you first. Like I said, we have to understand what exactly you need help with, and then based on that, we will give you a customized package based on your specific needs. Along with the quote associated with that, we'll tell you what we normally would charge for this. And then obviously we'll apply 15% discount to it. Okay. And then like from there, you can obviously decide if you want to work with us or not. In fact, before you even talk to us about, what packages will make sense for you, what we typically do is we actually allow everyone who wants to talk to another student, an upperclassman who has already gone through our program first. So you get to talk to a real human being who's already got an offer from our program or through our program from one of the top banks out there, either a bulge bracket or elite boutique bank. And you get to ask them whatever questions you want about recruiting, about their experience in our program. Like no other program out there is doing this. Okay. And you got to understand, like, if you're like wondering, like, cause I know a lot of people out there I know this for a fact. Like, a lot of people out there probably like, oh, well, like, how do I know this is legit? How do I know this program's like for real? How do I know, like, this is not a scam or whatever? It's like, think about a couple of things. Okay. One, our students that have already gotten offers from top investment banks, like, would they want to associate themselves, like both their name and like just who they are and like their identity, like would they want to associate themselves publicly with a program that is like not legitimate or is a scam? Like, no, they wouldn't, right? Because what would they get for doing that? Like they would potentially risk losing their jobs, right? And they have very little to gain for that. And so like, if you just really think about it, like, our clients are only, like they're only going to associate themselves with a program that they truly believe in and that has helped them tremendously. And so they want more people to know about it. Right. And so that's first thing you know. And the second thing is like, obviously, again, like I said, we offer a money back guarantee. And so like, we're going to sign a contract and it's going to lay out the terms and they say like, as long as you do all the work and you don't get it and you don't get the job, we're going to refund you all your money. And so like, again, nobody would do that if they actually didn't feel like they could deliver. Right. Or like, no scammer certainly would do that. And so like, I'll just get that out of the way. Like I feel right now, I'm just like answering all the most common questions that I know are going to come up. And so I'm just, like the price, kind of talked about it. Is this legit? Kind of talked about it. Like I said, you don't even have to talk to our team. Talk to someone who's gone through the program first. Okay. And then like after you talk to them, if you like what you hear and you still want to apply, then you can apply to talk to our team. And then what our team will do is we will want to ask you about your specific situation. What types of banks are you trying to get into? What are the challenges that you're looking for help with? Depending on like what you tell us, then we'll like decide, can we actually help you with those things? Are we confident enough in your ability to get a job with our help to the degree that we're willing to offer you a guarantee? And if the answer to all those things is yes, then we'll tell you like, okay, based on what you just told us, this is the XYZ package that makes sense for you. And this is how much it will cost. And this is how much it would be after a 15% discount. And then you can go back and decide, you can go talk to your parents. You can, figure out as a family if like this is something that you think would be beneficial for your future. And if not, that's okay. If it is, then hey, you can come on in. For the first 20 people who come in this month, we will give you the 15% discount. We can't give it to everybody, right? Like 20 people is probably the max that we'll be willing to give it to. And so as of today, because some people heard about this deal a little bit earlier, but as of today, we've already had 3 people that have taken advantage of this. So actually we're down to like the last 17 spots. Okay. So that's how fast these things are going. And so with that said, I'm going to open it up for questions. If you guys have any questions about whether it's the Black Friday deal or investment banking recruiting in general, you just want general recruiting advice, about your resume, how to build it up, about networking, about, prepping for interviews, about recruiting timelines, about our money back guarantee, whatever it is you want to know, just drop your questions down below in the comments. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, doesn't really matter where you're on right now watching this from, you should be able to ask questions. Okay. So if you guys start dropping the questions down below, I'm going to go through and try to answer as many questions as I can for the next 45 to 50 minutes or so. And then that's pretty much it. Okay. And then like before, while you guys are dropping the questions down there, and while we're waiting for kind of like the queue of questions to build up, I guess one last thing I should mention, for those of you that want to have, that call with the upperclassman who's already gone through a program, you can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. So that's, the street is abbreviated to ST. So it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And you'll be able to book a time on there. There's a calendar. You can book a time that works for you. And you'll hop on with this upperclassman. You can talk to them, ask them whatever they want, or ask them whatever you want. Ask about their experience with recruiting. Ask about, our program. Ask for advice. It's just like, we just call it a virtual coffee chat, and it's free. Okay. So go ahead and take advantage of that. Now let me start answering some of these questions. So some of these questions are starting to come through. So let me start on Instagram real quick. So NYC.legend asks, what are your packages? So like there, again, like I said, there's not like a set package per se, right? It's more like, what do you need? I can tell you like, what are the major areas that we typically help people with, right? For a lot of people, they're coming to us and they need help building up their resume. Like maybe you're struggling finding relevant experience to build up your resume to turn yourself into a competitive candidate. We can certainly help you with that, right? Certainly help you polish up all of your application materials, like your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, like all the things you're going to be using throughout the recruiting process, right? We can certainly help you with the networking, like teaching, both in terms of like teaching you how to network the right way to get as many referrals as possible from all the top banks, not just at the junior level, but across all levels of seniority, all the way up to managing director. We teach you how to do that also in an efficient manner where like we remove a lot of the grunt work and show you how to like automate and streamline your entire outreach process. We'll teach you how to answer interview questions in the best way possible, right? So like on the behavioral interview side, like how, like what kind of answers do the bankers want to hear? Like how do we, and like you're actually gonna like basically show us all the stories. We're gonna draft out all the stories that you're planning on using for the most common questions out there. And then we're actually going to like help you rewrite all of your answers by hand. Like you're gonna have like actual investment bankers help you rewrite all your answers so that we know it's exactly what the bankers want to hear. Haven't seen that offered anywhere else. On the technical side, we're going to teach you all the technical concepts you need to know from scratch, even if you have no prior finance experience whatsoever. You don't need to take any financial modeling courses. You don't need to have financial modeling experience. You don't need to have taken any accounting and finance classes in school. If you have, great, even better. If you haven't, doesn't matter. We'll teach you from scratch and you'll learn everything in just 20 to 30 hours. And you should be able to like go in and crush these technical interviews, right? And so like, those are like some of the things we help you with. We'll obviously do mock interviews with you. We'll also give you the opportunity to actually observe your peers and watch their mock interviews. Usually between once to twice a week. You have the opportunity to like just observe while we're giving other people mock interviews and we're critiquing their answers. And like, that's a really, really powerful thing that we haven't seen anyone else do, or that we don't think you can get anywhere else. Is like, one of the biggest things that people struggle with when it comes to interview prep is, you know, for the most part, what you want to say, right? You know, like if I say, tell me about yourself, you know, you have a story prepared for that. It's like, oh, this is my story. And you like walk through your resume, whatever. And then most people, the problem is like not knowing what they're going to say. Most people don't know what other people are saying, right? And like when you're going through an interview process, you're actually being compared against the other candidates. Like, so it's almost like your answers are being graded on a curve, right? And so it's not just about whether your answer is good or not, or if your answer is right or wrong. It's about whether your answers are better or worse than your competition's answers. And so most people, they're going into their interviews just like hoping that their answers are good enough, but they don't really know. And hope is just not a good strategy, right? And so like by allowing you to observe what we call like the mock interview hot seat. So like we put one person in the hot seat, 1 and 2 people in the hot seat every single week, and having you observe that, what you're going to do is you're going to be able to calibrate more accurately how you actually stack up against the field. Are your answers actually better than other people's answers? A lot of time, the answer is going to be no initially. Like your answers are not better than other people's answers. You can actually hear other people who have better stories and better interview answers than you. And that's a good thing, because then you can actually improve, because then you can actually like identify the things that, you know, you couldn't identify before, like the things that are in your blind spots. Like a lot of times people think that their answers are pretty good, but it's actually not, right? And hearing someone else's answer that's even better is almost like an eye-opening experience. It's like the only way for you to develop that self-awareness that you will lack otherwise, right? Usually your competition is not going to like be so generous and just like, oh yeah, sure, here, like check out all my answers. This is what I plan on saying, right? Nobody's going to do that, right? And like, especially if you go to a non-target school, there's probably not even that many people from your school that are trying to get into banking in the first place, right? If you go to a target school, like if you go to a Wharton or something like that, NYU, Columbia, like everyone's trying to get in banking, but everyone's also like super cutthroat and they're like holding their cards super close to their vest and like they're not sharing their information with you, right? And so like this is basically like we create this community where everyone's super collaborative, not just like your peers that are going through the interview process. Yes, they're super collaborative too. But like even the alumni, because we've had 700 people go through the program at this point, like we have a ton of alumni that are already working at these banks, and they're also really helpful as well, right? Like a lot of our alumni will help the younger students, help them prep for interviews, give them tips, give them advice, tell them what to expect, introduce them to other people at the firm, you know, tell them about job opportunities that just opened up. Sometimes like people renege on their offers and like people think, oh, this bank is done. Like Morgan Stanley's done. JP Morgan's done. But then like even like a couple of weeks ago, one of the elite boutiques, someone reneged in the New York office. And then like our students knew about it because one of our other students was, you know, working for that bank. And then they told us, right? And then, so now you can go back and like hit up your networking contacts there and like, because you know there's actually this opening that's not even being marketed, right? So like other people are even going for it because other people assume that this elite boutique was done so long ago. So like being a part of a community like that, that's collaborative, and being a part of that network is a huge competitive advantage, right? And you have like an information edge on your competition, right? We have this other thing like an interview questions database, which is like all of our students, like when they go to an actual interview, they'll come back and they'll write down the list of questions that they got, and then they'll submit it into like a centralized database. So we've crowdsourced at this point thousands, if not like tens of thousands of questions. Like I've lost count. I can't even count how many questions there are in there, but like thousands to tens of thousands of actual questions from actual interviews from like all the top banks, like all the bulge bracket, elite boutique, middle market banks, even a lot of top buy side firms. Like if it's a place that our clients have interviewed at, there's probably an entry in the database, or oftentimes multiple entries in the database on it, like exactly what these firms are asking. And these are like recent recruiting cycles, like all within like the past 2 or 3 years, basically. Right. And so like, rather than memorizing the questions from the 400 questions guide, which by the way, like everyone's doing that. And because everyone's doing that and the interviewers know you're doing that, they actually going out of their way to not ask those questions, right? Because they don't want to just like have you regurgitate an answer to a question that you were already anticipating. That doesn't do anything for them, right? So instead, like what we're seeing, because we can see the list of questions that people are submitting, is that these questions have actually been getting harder and harder because the standard, the bar has gone up because people are more prepared nowadays, right? And so they're actually asking questions that are not in those guides, and they're not just like definitional questions that you have to memorize, but these are like application questions where you actually have to like apply, you know, like your actual understanding of these concepts, right? And so like rather than practicing with like these questions, cookie cutter questions that everyone's memorizing that the bankers are not going to ask, why not practice with the actual questions that these banks are actually asking? And like there are instances where our clients will come back and tell us like, dude, I just went to an interview at so-and-so bulge bracket bank, and the questions that I got were exactly the same as the ones that were in the database, because they like some of them recycle questions and use the same set of questions and they don't even change it. Right. And so like, imagine that. It's like going into a test already knowing what to expect. Like, how are you going to fail that test? You can't. Right. So anyway, I know I kind of went on a tangent, but you're asking like, what are your packages? Like, there's not like a set package. It depends on what you need. Like, what do you need help with? I just described like a lot of the things that we can do, you know, a lot of the features inside of our community. Right. And like also for every person that comes in, you know, we created like a Slack channel where you can communicate with the coaches and also like everyone else in the program, like the entire alumni network and all of your peers and all these things I just talked about. Like Slack is kind of like our communication hub, but like you get your own private Slack channel where we have at least 3 coaches in there dedicated to helping you, both myself, as well as like at least 2 other people. We're all like former bankers, former PE guys. We've all worked at top firms and we're all like very experienced. And we don't even give you just 1 coach. We give you 3 so that we have around the clock coverage when you need help. Like anytime you message us and you have a question, you pretty much will get a response. If not right away, then within like a couple hours, right? Because someone is always like watching your channel and someone is always getting notified when you have a question. And like, it's literally 24/7. You can message us on weekends. It doesn't matter. We still respond. A lot of times you message us late at night. We still respond. Like we have like some of the coaches in your channel are on the East Coast, some on the West Coast. So we have like basically coverage of all the time zones. Like if you're messaging us and it's midnight on the East Coast, it might only be 9 p.m. for the guy on the West Coast. And we're still up and we're still responding. Right. Like that's how, like when we say like the support we provide in our program is like unlimited and on demand. That's what we mean by that. Right. And so like literally you will not get this type of support anywhere else. Okay. And so like, that's kind of what we offer. All right. Let me keep going because there are other questions that are coming in. RD Bob 124 says, would you say it's ever too early to network for 2024 positions? I feel like networking too early will make the person forget you later on, even if you leave a good impression. No, I don't think it's too early to network, especially now. It's certainly not too early. Like most of the elite boutique and bulge bracket banks are done with summer 2023 already anyway. So not even thinking about the summer 2023 class at all anymore. So if you start recruiting now or you start networking now for summer 2024, I don't think it's too early. The key is, to your point, to not be forgotten. The key is like, you got to follow up with them. You have to like check in with them periodically, right? Like we tell our clients to probably check in with their, all their contacts, like at least once a quarter. Right. And like, just, you know, give them an update on where you are and things like that. And like, we also teach in our program, like exactly how you should do that. Like there are best practices for how you can check in. You have to have a good reason to check in, right? You can't just be annoying about it. But how do you check in and how do you like kind of like keep the conversation going, push the ball forward, nurture that relationship. Like that is part of networking, right? Like a lot of people, they think networking is just like, oh, I talked to this banker once and then like, I don't talk to them again. And like, hopefully they remember me. It's kind of like the premise of your question, right? Like that's the wrong way to do it. Like networking, like you don't want to be super transactional about it. You want to be like building a relationship over a long period of time if you can, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Josh asks, how hard is it for international students to break into IB compared to domestic students? And I think there's another question here on YouTube that's related, which is SS asks, have you helped international students in the past? And so I answer both of those questions together. Yes, we have helped international students in the past. And yes, it is harder for international students to break in. If you guys want to see some case studies of international students who have gotten in with our help, you can go to our YouTube channel, go to the playlist tab, and then we actually have like a lot of different playlists that are like broken out into different categories in terms of case studies. And there is a category on there called international student where you can actually hear actual live interviews on video from other international students who have gone through our program and have gotten a job. Now, it is harder for international students. But the only reason it's harder is because you need sponsorship, right? And so if you need sponsorship from the firms, one, not all firms will sponsor, right? Typically, it's only the bigger firms like the bulge bracket banks, the elite boutiques, the middle market firms. Like I was like top 50 banks out there. Some of them will sponsor, some of them won't, right? And so you have a smaller pool of firms that you can recruit for. So that makes it harder, right? But two, even if they are going to sponsor you, like most of these banks, they want to know that you're actually worth the trouble of sponsoring. Like if you're only as good as the student who's a US citizen or a green card holder, it's easier for them to just hire the other person, right? They don't need like the headache of like having to sponsor your visa, both like financially, from a human resource standpoint. Like there's just more work that goes into that. So you have to make it worth their time, basically. So like if like a domestic student is this good, you have to be like this good for them to be like, oh yeah, like this person's worth it, right? And so like it is harder, but it can absolutely be done. And I'll just tell international students like the biggest thing is like it's even more important for you to start early, because the earlier you start, the better of a candidate you're going to become, right? And also the earlier you start, the more firms you'll have available to apply to, right? Because the way the recruiting timeline works is like most of the elite boutiques, if not all, will be done by the time you're done with your, will be done with junior summer internship recruiting by the time you're done with your sophomore year. So going into your sophomore summer, if you're still recruiting, most of the elite boutiques will be done, right? Now, most of the bulge bracket banks will be done by the end of your sophomore summer. So like going into your junior year, if you're still recruiting, most of those firms will be done, right? And then like, if you're still recruiting like past the first semester of your junior year, then like all the middle market banks will be done too. And then like after that, it's mostly regional boutiques, most of whom don't sponsor. And then like you're kind of out of luck, right? And so like the longer it takes you to get the offer, the fewer and fewer options you're going to have left in terms of firms that actually sponsor, right? And like I said already in the first place, not every firm sponsors. And so like time is of the essence and you just need to have a sense of urgency, right? And like when international students work with us, one of the biggest benefits, and for anyone in general that works with us, one of the biggest benefits is that we shorten the amount of time it takes for you to learn everything you need to learn, right? We shorten the amount of time it takes for you to prep for your interviews, and we shorten the amount of time it takes for you to like find internships and relevant experiences to beef up your resume. We shorten the amount of time it takes for you to like network with bankers, both in terms of like the amount of grunt work you have to do, but also in terms of like how well you convert. So you can like talk to less bankers and still get to the same number of referrals that you would have gotten otherwise, right? And so all these things are designed to shorten the process by removing the process of trial and error, right? If you know the best way to do something the very first time, then you don't have to like experiment or trial and error, make mistakes along the way and start over and do any of that. You just know like, hey, this is the best way. I'm going to do this the very first time around. I'm going to get the best results from doing this. And all you have to do is go out and execute, right? And by doing that, you save a lot of time, which means you get your offer sooner, which based on what I just said about the recruiting timeline, typically means you're going to get a better offer from a better firm, right? And then that obviously translates into more prestige, higher compensation, better exit opportunities, better career trajectory. Like it's a big deal, right? That's where you get your ROI, right? So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. Let me see what else. Let me go to the next question. Do you know which firms will not sponsor at all? Asking as a Canadian. Yeah. So the list of firms that change, or the list of firms that sponsor every year changes. So like a couple of years ago, JP Morgan sponsored, and like the last couple of years they didn't. And so like, honestly, I don't know like who decides these things, but like sometimes they'll like, you know, firms will change whether they sponsor or not. So there is not like a definitive list of what firms sponsor in any given year. Also, some firms we've seen, they'll tell different people different things, because at the end of the day, for a lot of firms, it's not whether they sponsor or not. It's like, are you worth sponsoring? Are you worth the trouble? Right. So like, we'll hear one student go and network with people at the firm, and then they'll say like, oh yeah, we do sponsor. And then like some other person will go and network with the same firm, and they'll be hearing like, oh no, sorry, we don't sponsor. A lot of times them saying, oh, we don't sponsor, is just like their nice way of letting you down because they don't think you're worth the trouble. Right. And so like, it's really, really hard to figure that out. There are like resources and stuff you can use to kind of like triangulate it, but it's not like 100%. Okay. So, how difficult is it for an international student to get hired who is pursuing master's in quantum finance? This is similar, same answer as before, right? I don't think like what you're majoring in necessarily matters that much. Master's in quantum finance certainly like is still relevant to finance, and so I think that shouldn't be a problem, but it is just harder for an international student. Okay. Let me move through some of the other questions, because we've talked a lot about this international student stuff. What's the range of pricing for the program, upper and lower end? Yeah, I would say like lower end, probably start in like the low 4 digits. And then like high end, we can go up as high as like low 5 digits, right? Like, so it's a wide range. That's why I said earlier, like if you're getting 15% discount, you're at least getting like a few $100s off. And then on the high end, you might be able to get like, even like 4 digits off. Like, just depends on like what you need, right? And so that's kind of like a range. I know it's not super helpful, but like that's the best answer I can give you, right? Like, if you're like looking for something that's just like, $200 or whatever, like, yeah, we're probably not the program for you, right? Because given everything I just described earlier in terms of like all the things that we do and all the support that we provide, and giving you like 3 bankers that are like dedicated to just helping you around the clock and so on and so forth, like you can see how like that just would not work, right? Like, so we're not the cheapest service out there. If you guys are looking for just the cheapest thing, we're not the right fit for you. Like, you can just turn this off right now and stop wasting your time. If you're looking for the best thing, if you want to like invest in your career, like you understand that this is one of the best investments you can make, because if you can like get into banking, you're making at a reputable bank minimum of $150,000 to $200,000 plus right out of college, and it only goes up from there, right? And then like how fast that goes up also depends on like how good of a bank you get into and how good your exit opportunities are, right? Like, it's not far-fetched for someone to like, get into a top tier bank, go into private equity at a mega fund, and like the third year out of school to be making like $350,000 to $400,000 a year. Like, that has happened for a lot of our clients. And so like, that's why I say like it's an investment, right? And so, you say multiple times in the toolbox interviews that your strategy for networking is to simply increase the conversion rate to interviews. What is the actual strategy to increase conversion? Yeah, that's a great question. So, the way to think about it is like, when I say increase conversion, like there's multiple conversion points, right? So for example, like starting from the top of your funnel, like who are you reaching out to, right? There are some people that are more likely to be willing to help than others. And so like choosing the right people is the first thing that will increase your conversion, right? Second thing is like reaching out to them through the right channels, right? Like some people reach out to LinkedIn, some people reach out to the email, so on and so forth. We recommend email because bankers check their email multiple times a day. A lot of bankers I know don't check their LinkedIn that much or at all, right? And so like it comes down to like, okay, can you get their contact information and find the right email? Like that could be another conversion point, right? Then the next thing is like, okay, now you got to send them the email. Well, how do you get them to like read your email? How do you get them to open your email, actually read it, respond to it? That comes down to like how you write the email, right? Like, what's your subject line? Like, what is the actual body of the email? Are you able to write it in like a professional and concise manner? Like, nobody has time to read like, your entire autobiography or whatever. Like they're getting so many emails from work already. So how do you like do it in a way that's straight and to the point, and also is engaging and gets them to like read it and be like, oh yeah, I want to talk to this guy, right? So like, that's another conversion point, right? If they don't respond to you, which a lot of times bankers won't respond to you, like, are you following up? How do you follow up? And if you follow up, how many times? How do you do it in a way that's like persistent without being annoying, right? Like that's another conversion point, right? If they do respond and they agree to talk to you, now that was the easy part. Now it's like, okay, you're on a call with them. What do you talk about with them, right? How do you turn them into an actual referral, right? Like, and to turn a banker into actual referral, like what you basically need is you need someone who one likes you and two is impressed by you. So you have to impress them and make them like you as a person, right? So like that's easier said than done though. Like, how do you do that? What do you talk to them about? What questions should you ask them? What questions should you not ask them? also they're going to be asking you questions. How do you answer the questions that they're going to be asking you, right? A lot of times that comes back to what I said earlier about your behavioral stories, like how polished are they? Are they actually better than the stories that other people are telling? Because other people are going to be networking with these bankers too, right? So what's going to make you stand out, right? That's another conversion point, right? After you had the first conversation with them, how do you like nurture that relationship? How do you follow up? Someone else asked earlier, like, is it bad if I network too early because I feel like they're going to forget about me? Well, no, because you got to nurture the relationship. So like, how do you nurture the relationship in a way that's effective, right? And then like ultimately, when push comes to shove and it's time to apply, like how do you make sure you're still on their radar? How do you make sure that they actually like, refer you, or like if they sometimes like they told you they were going to refer you, but they forgot about you, then like they might like they're super busy, then they might not do it, right? So like, how do you do all of these things? Like I just named like, I don't know, 5, 6, or 7 different like points of conversion. And at each step, like a banker that you came into contact with that you were trying to nurture as a potential referrer, they could drop off, right? And so like, depending on how leaky your bucket is, or like how high or how low your conversion rate is, like you can lose a lot of people along the way, right? So it could be there's like, if I told you have to reach out to 10 people to get one single referral versus if you had to reach out to 100 people to get to one referral, like that's a 10x difference in terms of the amount of time that you have to spend and the amount of effort and the number of conversations you have to have just to get to that same referral, right? So it's not just about like working harder, it's also about working smarter, right? Instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to go out and like just email so many people, talk to so many people, like, yeah, you can do that, but like eventually you run out of time, right? And also like the more time you free up, you're not spending on just like having pointless networking conversations that go nowhere. That's more time that you're freeing up to do other things that will improve your candidacy as well, like improving your grades in school, right? Like doing part-time internships to build up your resume, right? Like learning your technicals, prepping your stories. Like there's so many things that you have to do well in order to get the job. Like it's not just networking. So like all these things are fighting for like the same 24 hours that you have in a day, right? So like it's all opportunity cost. That's why like, it's so important to be efficient with this, right? So hopefully that makes sense, Nathan. You're asking some pretty good questions here, so thank you for that. What is the recommended method of initial outreach? As you say that spamming LinkedIn is a good idea. Yeah, I kind of just touched on this, right? Like we don't recommend LinkedIn. I mean, we do use LinkedIn as like a research tool, obviously, but like in terms of actually doing the actual outreach, we primarily do it through email. Okay. Patricio asks, how are you doing, Sam? I'm good, man. Thanks for asking. What do you know about off-cycle internships? Patricio, I assume, are you like in Europe, or when you say off-cycle internship, or are you in the US? Because like, I think like that term means different things in different areas, but like, in the US, like the bigger firms, like the bulge bracket, elite boutique, and middle market banks don't really have like off-cycle internships. So they really only do internships over the summer. At least most firms. There are like some exceptions to that, like some firms like PJT have like winter internships or winternships, but only at like very select target schools. And then they're like, but like it's very rare, right? But like in Europe, a lot of the big banks will have these like off-cycle internships that you can apply to. But like, so if you're in the US, it's gonna have to be mostly like smaller regional firms. Like all of our clients pretty much are doing off-cycle internships during the school year. Like you can't only wait for the summer to do internships, because then you don't have enough summers to actually build up your resume, right? Like nowadays, what we're seeing is like to be a really, really competitive candidate, like the most competitive candidates on average probably have at least like 2 to 3 relevant internships. Now, if like the junior summer internship applications open up halfway through sophomore year and you're only going to intern during the summer, that means you only have your freshman summer to get an internship. And that's only enough to get one internship. So that's not enough, right? So that's why like people are doing part-time internships during the school year, during the fall, during the spring, and then they're still doing a summer internship over the summer. That's the only way for you to like really be able to like stack enough internships onto your resume to be competitive enough, right? So hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if I really answered your question, but like if you have a more specific question about off-cycle internships, feel free to ask. Okay. B non asks, how much time is coaching? Not really sure I understand your question. So you might have to like elaborate on what it is that you want to know. But if I try to take a stab at it, I think like if you're asking like, hey, how much time is it going to take for me to like learn everything I need to learn across like all 4 areas, right? Like application, building up your resume, networking, behaviorals, technicals, like those are the 4 main areas that we typically focus on. If that's what you're asking, then to learn everything from scratch, coming in as a total newbie, working with us, I would say it's about 50 to 60 hours work on your part. That's it. That's like extremely efficient, extremely accelerated. Some people I know, like they spend like hundreds of hours just learning the technical portions alone, right? Like we said, we probably dedicate about 20 to 30 hours to learning technicals. And then the rest is like doing everything else, right? And so like we always tell everyone, if you just do like 1 hour a day, if you only dedicated 1 hour a day to recruiting prep, you'll be able to learn everything in 2 months, which is like pretty crazy, right? You do not need to spend all this time and effort and energy spinning your wheels, which is what most people are doing, right? It does need not like it's never easy, but it doesn't need to be as hard as you make it to be, right? For most of you, investment banking recruiting is so important to you that you're probably going to dedicate more than 1 hour a day to it. So if you dedicate more than an hour a day to it, you can finish it in even less time, right? Like the most extreme examples, like we have some students that come into our program and right after they join, they're like, oh, shoot, Sam, I just got invited to an interview that I applied to before I joined the program. And it's in like 4 days. I don't know anything, right? And then they spend like the next 4 days cramming for the interview. And then they go out and they get like 4 offers, right? Like this is like literally a real person that I'm thinking about. I won't like say his name because he wants to be anonymous, but like these are like true stories, right? So like that's how efficient it can be. Okay. Let me go to the next question. Brandon Russell on LinkedIn asked, sorry, Sam, I came in late. No problem. How long does this special deal last? This deal is on for the month of November and it's available for the first 20 people who want to take advantage of it. And we've already sold it to 3 people just in the last couple of days. So we have 17 spots left for this deal specifically. So either like, so the 17 spots run out or the month ends, whichever one comes first, that's when the deal ends, if that makes sense. Okay. And again, Brandon, I don't know how much you caught, but basically what the deal is, it's 15% off whatever package you end up needing. Okay. Which is all fully customized based on your needs. All right. SS asks, why is Wall Street Mastermind better than courses like WSP and Breaking Wall Street, especially the technical components? So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So the biggest difference, there are so many differences, but one of the biggest differences is that this is not just a course, right? When you say Wall Street prep course or Breaking the Wall Street course, usually it's like a financial modeling course. Okay. There's nothing wrong with financial modeling courses. But like what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up watching like probably 100+ hours of financial modeling videos. And what these videos are is like just some guy or whoever created the course, they share their screen and they're like just moving around in a spreadsheet, linking stuff up, typing in numbers, using these Excel formulas and whatever. And they're just like giving you the voiceover while they're doing that. Right now, there's a place for that. But what you're learning from doing that is like how to do the job. But what you need to learn before you learn how to do the job is how to get the job. And what do I mean by that? Like people conflate those two things. They're actually totally different skill sets, right? The investment banking recruiting prep industry, or the largest players in this industry, which are the companies that you've named, the Wall Street Preps, the Breaking the Wall Streets, the Wall Street Oasis of the world, they've kind of told everyone or gotten everyone to believe that the best way to learn your technicals is to learn how to financial model. And I understand why that's like very easy to believe because again, you're learning how to do the job, right? You need to learn how to build financial models on a job. But what I can tell you right now, after having coached 700 students and having them go through every single interview at all the top banks, and we've placed people in every single bulge bracket, every single elite boutique bank, and I think pretty much every single middle market bank, the top banks out there, the most reputable banks out there, do not have financial modeling tests as part of your interview process. They will not whip out a laptop and put it in front of you and open up a blank spreadsheet and be like, and say like, hey, SS, like build us a DCF. Hey, build us an LBO or whatever. Like they just don't do that. What they're actually going to ask you to do in these interviews is they're going to ask you to verbally explain these concepts to them. Like what I always tell people is like, if you are actually able to verbally explain and teach these concepts in a concise way to a 12-year-old, to your brother in 6th grade, that's when you know you're actually ready. You have to be able to teach this stuff to someone else, right? And so that's why like everyone that's like taking financial model courses, like you're not actually learning how to verbally explain these concepts, right? Like you're also like, a lot of people get overwhelmed because they're like trying to keep up, trying to understand what's going on in the spreadsheet. Oh, you change this number in this one cell and all these other numbers change, but like why? And it's just like you're not learning what you actually need to do in an interview setting. Once you've gotten the offers and before you start your job, you probably have at least like 6 to 12 months before you start your job. If at that point you want to learn how to build financial models, like be my guest, like by all means, I think that's great, but just don't put the cart before the horse, right? So that's like on the financial modeling side. On the interview guide side, which is like the other popular resource that these companies offer. The problem with that is, I kind of covered it earlier. Like they give you a list of 400 questions. They give you a list of however many questions, usually a couple hundred questions, and then like write out the answers to those questions underneath, right? And like what most people do is they just go and memorize the answers to those questions. And that's not like, you're not going to get those exact questions because your interviewers already know like what the most popular guides are. There's Breaking in Wall Street guide, like 400 questions, and Wall Street Oasis guide. There's Wall Street Prep Red book. Like there's like 3 or 4 guides that everybody's reading. They're deliberately not asking the questions from those guides. How do we know this? Because again, our students come back and they show us the list of questions that they got asked in the actual interviews, and they add it all to the centralized database, and we see exactly what the firms were asking. And yes, we've read all those guides and we know what's in those guides, and it's not the same questions, right? And so like, if all you're doing is like trying to go through and memorize this guide, like it's just not, one, they're going to throw you a question that you didn't memorize and you're going to be thrown off, right? And 2, the analogy I'll give you is like, can you learn your technicals by just reading a guide on your own? Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying like, that's not possible or no one can, that it can't work for, anyone doing it that way. Obviously it's worked for some people, right? All I'm saying is like, is it the most effective way? No. Is it like the most efficient way? No. Is it the highest probability way for you to like master these concepts? No. Like for every person you show me who master their technicals by doing it this way, I can probably show you 10 people who tried doing that and failed, right? It's just that there's survivorship bias. Like you're going to hear from all the people that succeeded and you're asking them like, hey, how did you get into like Goldman Sachs? And it's like, oh, I just studied this guy. So this is all you need. Here, go read this, right? The other 10 people that applied to Goldman Sachs and didn't get in, they're not going around advertising the fact that they failed to get into Goldman Sachs, right? So you're not even hearing from them. So like, just because you know people who did it this way doesn't mean it's the best way, right? And the last thing I'll tell you is like, from an analogy standpoint, it's like, why do you go to college? Why do you pay, like, some people pay upwards of $70,000 to $80,000 to go to college, right? Like you could just buy the exact same textbooks that you would use in class and just like read it on your own and try to learn everything that way, right? Why go to class and have a professor actually like teach you stuff during the lecture? Why go to office hours and ask questions? Why go to a section? Why like, talk to your TA? Why like, get feedback, right? From your professor, from your TA, from your peers? Why work on group projects? Like, why do you do all those things? Like, which way is more effective when it comes to actually like learning the things you need to learn? Of course, it's like if you do all the things we just talked about versus like if you just stayed home and read a book, right? So that's kind of like the analogy. It's like Wall Street Mastermind, the way we're teaching you stuff, it's almost like you're taking just another elective in school, but it's not offered by your school, right? And this elective is just like how to get a job in investment banking, right? And you're not just learning on your own. You're getting feedback from the coaches. You're getting feedback from me, from other assistant coaches. You're also learning from your peers. Like a lot of times, being able to learn in that group setting, as opposed to trying to learn everything on your own, you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. You don't know what questions you should be asking. Or sometimes you feel like you understand a concept, so you think you don't have any questions until you see someone else ask a question about that very concept. And then you're like, oh shit, I actually don't know the answers to that. Maybe I don't know this as well as I do. So like being able to hear other people's questions and learn from other people's questions also will like uncover your blind spots, and that's going to accelerate your learning. That's going to help you like not miss stuff that you would have missed otherwise. Right. And so like I could go on and on and on why this is better than just like you taking a DIY course like Wall Street Prep or Breaking into Wall Street. But to recap, the two main reasons I would just say is one, like you don't need financial modeling for your interviews at all. So if you thought that, unfortunately, like I hate to say it, but you've been misled, right? And two, like memorizing answers from the guides do not work because the bankers don't ask the exact same questions from the guides. And then three, it's like there's just a better way to learn. That's why you don't learn that way when you're in school, right? And we're just kind of like it's common sense to me, but like I don't know why. Like it's not apparently it's not like obvious to a lot of other people, but hopefully that makes sense, right? Um, Nathan asks, what are your thoughts on compatibility with US students with the intention to graduate in 3 years? Good or bad idea? And how does it impact the recruiting talent eligibility? Yeah, Nathan, I would say like purely from a recruiting standpoint, if you graduate a year early, it's a bad idea because it shortens your runway to recruit, right? Like if for most people, the junior summer internship application opens up halfway through sophomore year. If you graduate in 3 years, that means that when you first get to college, you're a freshman, but you're effectively a sophomore. So now that means that to get your summer internship, which is going to be between your second and your third year, because you're only going to graduate in 3 years, the application for that is going to start like basically halfway through your freshman year. And so it just doesn't give you enough time to prep, to build up your resume, to network, to like, you know, learn what you need to learn for the interviews. And you essentially have 1 year less than everybody else you're going to be competing with because they're graduating in 4 years and they've had, you know, they've been in college for a year longer than you and they've been doing the things that you're just starting to do for the entire past year, right? So they have a huge leg up on you. So like, unless there's really, really good reason, we typically don't recommend that people try to graduate early just for recruiting purposes. Now, like, I think like if you need to graduate early to save money on tuition or whatever, like obviously that's a very personal decision. I don't know anything about you. So I'm just strictly speaking from the standpoint of like, is that like a favorable thing to do? For the recruiting timeline? And it's like, it's not, it just isn't. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Patricio asks, yes, Europe. I've seen those programs on most of the top banks websites. Yeah. So yeah, like in Europe, like a lot of banks do offer those off-cycle internships. So like if you can get those, you should absolutely try to get those, right? Like it's just it's something that a lot of students in the US wishes that they had, but we don't have that here. So we don't have that luxury. Like if you can get those, like it's a huge boost for your resume. And obviously if you do a good job, those can also convert into full-time offers, right? So it's like just one more opportunity for you to break in through. Okay. SS asks, is 20 hours enough time to gain all technical knowledge needed for interviews as it seems very accelerated? It is accelerated. 20 hours, I would say probably is on like the low end. But like I said, I gave a range, right? It's like 20 to 30 hours, right? And then like obviously also, look, everybody's different. For some people, this stuff comes more easily. And for some people, they take a little bit longer. So I'm not saying like every single person is going to be 20 hours. Maybe some people are 20, maybe some people are 30, maybe some people are even 40, right? I'm just giving you like a ballpark range, but no matter where you are in that range, what matters is that like if you do it kind of like if you do it using the other like inferior ways that we've been talking about, it's just going to take you even longer, right? Like a lot of people, like I said, like no exaggeration, because we've spoken to thousands of students in the past few years. A lot of people spend like hundreds of hours learning technicals. This thing about it, like they're going about it is like, okay, let me memorize the answers to these 400 questions. How long is it going to take you to memorize answers to all 400 questions? A long time, probably more than 20 hours. And also like, as soon as you don't review like those answers for like a week, you're going to forget at least half of it, right? Like we've all done that before where we try to like cram for a final exam. And as soon as the exam's over, like you forget everything, right? So if you have to like, you're like on this like, you're like, you know, those little rats that run on like the spinning wheels, like you have to like keep running on that. And you can't get off, right? You have to like keep refreshing yourself. You're refreshing your memory of like, oh, what's the answer to this question? And then like the worst thing is like that question won't even be asked in your actual interview. right? Versus if you just learn the underlying concepts, once you get it, you have that aha moment. And once you get to the point where you're able to teach it to someone else, it'll stick with you forever. And you don't have to keep reviewing it. That's why it doesn't need to take that much time. But again, you have to learn it the right way. You have to use the right approach, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Gotcha. Thanks. The stuff about learning for the job versus learning to get the job makes a lot of sense. I signed up for a virtual coffee chat and excited to see how it progresses. Cool, man. Yeah. Like, look forward to hopefully maybe meeting you or talking with you. But like for now, yeah, speak to the alum, hear from a real person, ask them whatever questions you want, and then decide for yourself if this is the right thing for you, right? And if you want to take the next step, they can help you set that up. If you don't want to take the next step, that's totally fine. You can just like take whatever advice you get from them, go out, implement on your own. Like no matter what, our goal is just for you to like walk away with some value, right? So on that note, like for those of you who joined late, and maybe you didn't hear this earlier, if you want to book a virtual coffee chat with an upperclassman who's already successfully gotten an offer from either a bulge bracket or elite boutique bank, and just kind of like ask them about recruiting advice, ask them about their experience in our program, ask them whatever questions you might have, talk to a real person who's gone through it to like make sure this is legitimate, whatever it is that you want to do. You can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST. So it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And call is completely free. There's no obligation to sign up or anything like that. It's just for you to be able to do your due diligence, because I know there's a lot of noise out there about like, oh, is this program legit? Is it not? Like, just find out for yourself, right? Do your due diligence, put on your, like, use your critical thinking skills and see if this feels real to you, right? And again, we're the only service out there of our kind to offer a money back guarantee. No one else is doing that, all right? Which means if you do the work and you don't get results, we will refund you every last cent of your investment. So it's almost like you can only win, you can't lose, right? Like all you have to do is do the work, which like hopefully is not asking too much, right? So we have a money back guarantee for the month of November. Again, we have, to recap, we have a Black Friday deal. It's 15% off all of our packages, which will be determined based on your needs if you want to apply. And then like we're giving the 15% off to the first 20 people. Well, I guess at this point, the first 17 people, the next 17 people that sign up, because we already sold 3 of them. So that's our Black Friday deal. Hopefully that's exciting for you guys. If it is, great. If it's not, no worries. And I have about 2 minutes, so I'm happy to answer any last minute questions that you guys might have. And I see a couple more questions just came in, so let me try to answer these. Sam, thank you for taking so much time to discuss these topics with us for broader recruiting. Yeah, no problem, Nathan. Thanks for all the great questions that you asked. I do appreciate it. How does previous entrepreneurial experience look with regards to recruiting? I have a profitable business that I started a year ago and want to know relevance and how much I should mention. Yeah, I mean, I think, dude, you should definitely like, include that on your resume. I think that's like always a plus. Like, it just shows that, hey, you're someone who has a good business sense. Like, it's not like the most relevant thing. Like, if you have like an investment banking internship, you have a private equity internship, like that's obviously still gonna be more relevant. But like, it all depends on like how you spin the experience, how you package it, how you talk about, like, as an entrepreneur, like starting your own business, there are a lot of things that you have to do, right? And so like, what were those things, and how do you tie that back to finance? And also like, what did you learn from doing those things? Like, those are the things that you should think about as you're like crafting the bullet points on your resume, and also as you're crafting your stories that you want to use for your behavioral answers. But like, absolutely, that's like a very big part of your past and big part of your experience, and you should not like hide that or shy away from it or anything like that, right? If anything, done the right way, that's something that can make you stand out and really set you apart from other people. Okay. Brown Vanessa says, how have you managed delayed graduation situations? Are gap semesters an option, or do firms check transcripts to ensure you're a full-time student? Great question. This is kind of like the flip side of the other question that was asked earlier about like, hey, is it bad to actually graduate early? Right. So like I said, I think it's bad from a recruiting standpoint to graduate early because you have a shorter runway. What some students have figured out, and a lot of them have done, including like we have a lot of students in our program that have done this too, which is if you're starting late and you're behind in the recruiting timeline, and especially if you're an international student where like, oh, like most of the firms that would sponsor have already like finished hiring, or even if you're not an international student, but you're just behind the 8 ball and you start late, what you could do is delay your graduation by a semester, right? If you delay your graduation by a semester, what that does is it makes you eligible to recruit for the following class. So like, let's say, for example, hypothetically, let's draw this out for people to be more explicit. Let's say your original graduation day was May 2024. So that means that you're currently a junior, right? And so your junior summer internship would have been a summer 2023 internship. Now, as of the time of this recording, November 8th of 2022, bulge bracket banks are done recruiting. Elite boutique banks are done recruiting. Most middle market banks are done recruiting also for summer 2023. There might be some like onesie, twosies left here and there, but like for the most part, you're probably going to have to go for like a regional boutique bank. And like for the most part, that's probably not even possible if you're an international student because regional boutique banks won't sponsor visas. So like at that point, like what you could do is like if you push back your graduation by a semester to December, now you graduate December 2024. Now you're eligible for the summer 2024 internship as opposed to the summer 2023 internship. And for summer 2024, we're at the beginning of that recruiting process, right? Like RBC has opened their application. Rothschild has opened their application, I think. But like, that's pretty much it. None of the other top banks have even opened their application yet. Like a lot of them will soon, probably in the next month to 1.5 months or so is kind of our estimate. But like you're at the very beginning of that. So you still have like almost like the entire next 12 months or so to try to get into an elite boutique bulge bracket or a middle market bank, right? So like that's the benefit of like pushing back your graduation. You don't have to push back an entire year. You just push back by one semester. That's good enough. And so like, yeah, like our students, not everyone, but like some of the people that needed to do that have done that, right? Like you're basically evaluating the trade-off between like paying for an extra semester of school versus like buying more time to be able to recruit for a better bank right out of the gate, right? And so for a lot of people, that's worth it, right? Now, in terms of your question around, do firms check transcripts to ensure you're a full-time student? No, like if you're taking a gap, I mean, you can take a gap semester to delay, but like if you do, what most people will do is like they'll go and actually find an internship, a relevant internship to do during that semester, so that it's like a legitimate reason for taking a gap. You're not just like taking a gap and doing nothing, right? You just have to have like a good answer prepared for why you had to take a gap, right? The other thing is like if you don't want to take a gap, if you're worried about taking a gap and how it looks on your transcript, then what you could do is just like pick up a double major or pick up a minor, or like, I mean, every school is different. You have to go and check with your school on like the academic requirements and whether like it's even allowed, or like, how many more classes will you have to add on for you to be able to delay graduation? Or some people like will reduce the number of credits that they take each semester. Like instead of taking 15 units, maybe you only take 12 because 12 is the minimum required. And by reducing it by 3 units every semester, now you have like a full extra semester that's needed before you can graduate. Like, so there's different ways that you can do it so that you can graduate in 4.5 years and in 4 years. And like, if you ever get asked why you graduated in 4.5 years, you just have to have a good answer prepared for it. And like, that's another thing that we can help you with, right? It's just like part of the behavioral interview prep that you have to do, right? So hopefully that makes sense, Brown. I see a couple more people just join. Bo says, hi, Sam. Good evening. Hey, Bo, what's up, dude? Good to see you. You're actually joining on like the very tail end of this. We're actually about to wrap up, but if you have any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm happy to, try to answer it before we hop off. Bashal Shah, as I'm an international student, I'm in sophomore year, 3rd semester. Thank you for joining you in summer. What should I do? Yeah, Bashal. So I would say like, if you're an international student and you think about joining us, I would encourage you to join like as soon as possible. And ideally, if you don't have to wait till the summer, I would not wait till the summer. And here's why. Going back to what I said earlier, if you're an international student, like the only banks that you're going to be eligible for are either elite boutiques, bulge brackets, or middle market banks. Like those are the banks that are like big enough to actually sponsor visas, right? And not all of them will sponsor either. It's only going to be a subset. So let's say like the top 50 banks, right? Top 20 banks are like elite boutiques and bulge bracket banks. Then like the next 30, let's call them like middle market banks. A subset of those top 50 banks might sponsor. Let's say if like half of them sponsor, that's 25 firms, right? And so like, if there's only 25 firms that you can go after, by like elite boutiques, which there are like, I think 10 of those, by the end of your sophomore year. So by the end of your, like by May or June-ish, when you're entering your sophomore summer, that group will be done recruiting. So you have to take that off the board, right? Now you have even less firms, right? Then like by the end of sophomore summer, like going into your junior year, the bulge bracket banks will be done recruiting. So now you take those off the board. Now you only have middle market banks left. Going into junior year, you're recruiting for middle market banks. And then by the end of your first semester of junior year, most of the middle market banks will be done recruiting by then. And then like now you have like nothing, right? And so like as an international student, you need to have a lot more urgency because you have fewer firms that you're eligible for in the first place. And the sooner you start prepping, the sooner you're going to be ready and the sooner you can apply and the more options you're going to have and the more likely it is that you're going to actually be able to get an offer. Okay. So that's why I would highly encourage you to not wait until the summer. Like if there's a reason why you have to wait until the summer, you should message me and like we can talk about it and see if there are like other ways that we can work around it to allow you to start earlier. All right. So hopefully that helps. On Instagram, I have a question from Glenn who says, what is the most prestigious finance firm in the world? Well, Glenn, depending on like, I mean, finance is a very broad term, right? Like, and also like saying the most prestigious investment bank versus the most prestigious private equity firm. This is the most prestigious hedge fund. It's all different, right? Like it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges. Most prestigious investment bank. I mean, I think most people will probably say Goldman Sachs, right? Most prestigious private equity firm. I mean, this is probably, I mean, it's somewhat subjective, but I think a lot of people would say Blackstone, right? So like it just depends, right? But like I would say like at that level, when you're talking about like the tier one firms, like there's some subjectivity. Like some people might say Goldman Sachs, some people like prefer elite boutiques over bulge bracket banks. So they might say like, well, Evercore's better or Centerview's better or something, right? Like and private equity firms, Blackstone, KKR, Carlyle, like, Apollo, TPG, like there's a lot of mega funds out there that manage tens and tens of billions of dollars. They're all very prestigious. So you're kind of like splitting hairs, right? Highest paying finance firm. Honestly, it's probably like some hedge fund or some private equity firm. I mean, in the private equity world, it's probably like Apollo or Hellman and Freeman or one of those like mega funds that like, I mean, as a first year associate, which is your third year out of school, you could be making 450, 500K even, 3 years out of school. Like it's not unheard of. It's pretty crazy, right? Hedge funds, like the pay grade is a lot more volatile. And so it's less fixed and it's more about like your performance and you what you kill. So like you can make a lot more than that, but you can also make a lot less than that. So that's like harder to compare, right? Arthur Zakharov on LinkedIn asks, when do you expect first rounds to start? Both PE/IB early February. Yeah, I think like last year it was around that time, but also last year, like the first big wave of applications opened up in like mid-January. And every year it happens slightly earlier. So we actually think that this year, we're just an educated guess, but we think that this year the first big wave of applications might open up in December. And so like if that does happen, like we expect, then you might have to pull everything forward even a little bit from last year, right? So it's kind of like you can make educated guesses around these things, but like there's almost no point trying to like predict the exact time. Like you're just not going to know unless you actually like work on the HR team at these firms, right? And so like just control the things you can control, right? I will like try to get yourself ready for investment banking interviews like as soon as you can, right? Like try to get up to speed on the behaviorals as quick as you can and get up to speed on the technicals as soon as you can, right? And like the sooner you're ready, like whenever firms open up, they open up. Like it's almost irrelevant, right? So there's still plenty of time. It's only November right now. And so like, like I said, if you have the right approach, interview prep does not need to take a long time. 20 to 30 hours for technicals, maybe another 10 to 20 hours for behaviorals, and like you're set, right? At least that's how it is for the clients that we're working with. Okay. Bo asks, after coffee chat with bankers, I sent several emails to ask for passing up, but got no response. Doesn't mean I failed the coffee chat. How should I do next? Yeah, I mean, by passing up, I assume you mean like you're asking them to like refer you to someone more senior. And so like, yeah, like usually if you ask someone to refer you to other people, and they ignore you, I mean, there's two possibilities. One is like they're just busy and they just haven't responded because they either didn't see it, or they saw it and they meant to respond later, but they just haven't had a chance to do it yet. The other possibility is like, yeah, they don't like you enough or weren't impressed by you enough to actually like help you out any further, right? Like for them to go and refer you to other people or connect you with their colleagues or ask someone else on the team to talk to you, it's kind of like asking someone else a favor. They're like, it's almost like they're making an ask of someone else, like asking for a favor. Is like they're using up some of their political capital or their goodwill at work. And they just can't do that for every single person. So they're not going to do that for every single person that they talk to. So they're going to be selective about who they do that for. Right. So yeah, like you're right. It is. I think if you're getting ghosted by bankers, like it's at best neutral, and at worst, it means like you didn't really achieve your objective. Right. And so like, without knowing like exactly what you guys talked about, how the conversation went, it's very, very hard to say like, what they're thinking, but reading between the lines, yeah, that's kind of how we interpret it. Okay. Subset 01 on Instagram said, what is the option for a junior with no to very less experience? Is it possible to break in? Okay, so if you have little to no experience as a junior, then I mean, it's very hard to almost impossible to break in if you have no relevant experience. So the first step is you got to go out and get some relevant experience, right? And so like, depending on why you haven't been able to get experience, we need to figure out what that blocker is and we need to solve it, right? For a lot of people, it's a chicken and egg problem, which is like, I don't have any experience. So I've been applying to a bunch of jobs, but no one will hire me. No one will hire me because I don't have any experience. But if no one will hire me, how am I supposed to get the experience? That's what I mean by like the chicken and egg problem, right? And so like, if that's what you're stuck on, then, what we do for like a lot of our clients have this problem when they first come in. We're like, usually they're underclassmen, sometimes they're juniors too, like you, but they just like, they know they need experience, but they haven't been able to get any. And so usually what we'll do is like, we have our own proprietary methodology, which is like too long to go into here, but long story short, if you use it, you should be able to find like a highly relevant internship in just 1 to 2 weeks. Like, let's call it 2 weeks on average. So it's like very quick. It's worth 100% of the time. Usually we'll end up placing you into like a small private equity firm or maybe a search fund or something similar where you're helping these funds basically find a business that they can acquire. Okay. And so like it's highly relevant because you're doing M&A work, which is basically what investment bankers do. And a lot of these internships, like you can do them remotely. So it doesn't matter where you go to school. You can do them, just from your dorm. And doesn't matter if you're super busy, like it's flexible, it's remote. The hours are like, you can do them whenever you want, as long as you get the work done. And so there's a lot of things that we like about it. And like, once you get that, and because you can also get it very quickly, you can add that to your resume. And then now, like every subsequent application you submit, you're going to have a much easier time, right? Because you actually have something to point to on your resume that's relevant, right? And so that's kind of like what I would suggest for that. All right. I'll do 1 or 2 more questions and I got to hop, guys. So if you have any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll try to get to them. Okay. Glenn asks, since Goldman is the first that comes to mind, when one asks, what is the most prestigious finance firm? Would that be the highest paying one? Finance firm, meaning all firms across the entire. No, Goldman is not the highest paying firm in the entire industry. In fact, there's this thing called like Goldman discount, where like Goldman historically has paid slightly less than some of the other investment banks because they know that people want that Goldman brand. And so they think that people are willing to work for them for a little bit less, right? So like most prestigious definitely does not always mean highest paying. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question, Glenn. But okay, I don't see any other questions in the queue. And I'm also kind of losing my voice for those of you that haven't noticed because I'm a little bit sick. So anyway, hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. We do these live Q&As once a month. And so this is kind of just like our way to help people out who, regardless of whether you're in our program or not. But, this month we also had the extra announcement of our Black Friday sale. So again, if you guys are interested in the Black Friday sale, 15% off for the first 20 people that sign up this month. We got 17 spots left. We have a money back guarantee. which means as long as you come into the program, you do the work and you don't get a job, we'll refund you every last cent of your money. So if you're interested in that, we'll also let you talk to a real human being, an upperclassman who's already got an offer from a top investment bank, either a bulge bracket or elite boutique bank. You can talk to them first, ask them whatever questions you want, make sure everything's legitimate, make sure everything checks out, do your own due diligence. And then if everything sounds good and you still want to move forward and you want to take advantage of this deal, we can talk about your situation. We can come up with a customized game plan that makes us extremely confident that it's going to get you a job, which is why we're willing to offer you a guarantee. And then you can decide based on that if you want to move forward or not. Okay. So if you guys want to do that, again, just one last reminder, you can go to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST. So it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you. All right. All right, guys, that's going to be it. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll be back with another live stream at this time next month. And until then, we'll talk to you guys soon. All right.